Pickleball's closest comparison is actually ping pong, especially at the kitchen. It's not tennis. When you're at the kitchen in pickleball and you're dinking back and forth, super similar to ping pong. You know, you're close to each other, and if you watch the best ping pong players in the world, their feet are not shoulder width apart. Their feet are wider, and there's a reason for that. Balance. I mean, it just helps you keep your hands in front too. The wider your base is, I think it's easier for your hands to be in front. If you're standing up straight, you're kind of close to your body with your hands. So yeah, keep your feet wide, and something that helps with that is always, if you're moving to your right, right foot first, left foot first.
For over 10 years, innovation has been at the core of who we are at Selkirk. We take risks, we test, we evolve. Introducing the Selkirk Lab 006. With an Infinigrit surface that lasts at least 3 times longer than rock carbon, and a titanium mesh layer for added power, while maintaining the largest sweet spot available, because good is never good enough.
All right, thank you for watching another episode of my show. We're going to talk about specifically getting your feet behind the ball on dinks and how that helps you get topspin instead of reaching and then getting slice. So I think that the biggest mistake of most amateur players when I see them playing and hitting dinks is that they will lean like this with their body and then slice dinks. For me, I'm almost never leaning this way. My torso and upper body is pretty much always perpendicular to the ground. You know, I'm face in a good athletic position, and then I'm going to move with my legs left or right instead of trying to lean like this. There's a couple of good drills for this, actually. I would just say that, so when I say getting my feet behind the ball on dinks, what that means is if I see the ball is over here to my right, instead of leaning here, I'm going to move with my feet to then get my feet behind that ball so that it's easier for me to impart topspin on the ball. So it does a couple things. There's a couple reasons that you want to get your feet behind the ball on dinks. The first one is it's easier to get topspin, obviously, because getting topspin from out here without using the wrist is almost impossible. Getting it from here, when it's in between your shoulders and your feet are behind the ball, so to speak, it's a lot easier to get topspin that way. And you have to use your wrist, and I'm sure you've been told that you don't want to use your wrist on topspin dinks, which is true, right? So you want to get your feet behind the ball for that reason. The other reason you want to get your feet behind the ball is because if the ball is in between your shoulders, I think you're a lot less likely to have to chop at it and slice it and then make that mistake. Generally, a topspin dink is better than a splice dink. If you have the ability to hit topspin with your dink, I think you should. So as long as you're consistent with it. And I think the way to be consistent with a topspin dink is to get your feet behind the ball instead of the reaching. So I'm almost never reaching left or right. The only time I'm leaning with my body is when I'm leaning forward. If you're leaning forward to then attack a ball out of the air, that makes sense. And that's something you'll see the pros do a lot, but you'll rarely see the pros move and lean left to right. So there's a couple drills there. The first drill that I think I did this at the clinic that I taught where there was just some really bad footwork on this court and everybody was leaning and just moving with their body. And it seems kind of like their feet were disconnected from their body. Their brain wouldn't really talk to their feet. And so I kind of came up with this drill on the spot, and it ended up being like a complete game changer for those people. I said, and this was when they were playing kitchen points. It was 2-on-2 kitchen points. So you would dink the feed, you would dink it back, and then you would just play it out. Anything goes. And I told them, all right, guys. And this was after a few points of just really poor play. I was like, guys, how about this? The first thing to react has to be your feet. So you see where the ball is, you're about to hit it. You don't move your hand first, you move your feet first. The first thing that moves has to be your feet, no matter what. You cannot move your hand without moving your feet. And before the point started, I was like, all right, guys, we're going to practice. I'm going to say, move to your right. Everybody moves to their right. And they moved to their right. The first thing that moved was their foot. They didn't move to their right like this and kind of do those two things simultaneously. Feet have to move first. Your hands can move as much as you want them to. You know, you can use your wrist. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. You can have bad technique in the upper body. That's fine. But for the purposes of this drill, the first thing that has to move in anticipation of, okay, I'm about to hit the ball, first thing that has to move is your feet. And exaggerate it. Just make sure that that's the case. And then for the next 5 minutes, they played better than I had ever seen them play. And it's funny because people don't realize that, obviously, I mean, many people would say this is the biggest weakness just in general in the amateur game is footwork. And that's not really a bad thing. I think that also is just an indicator of the fact that pickleball is not the hardest sport to pick up. You know, there are a lot of people that aren't spectacular athletes that can pick up pickleball and play and have fun and have a great time. So I think that it's natural to say, okay, well, it makes sense that, you know, footwork and movement's not going to be the biggest strength of the average pickleball player. So if somebody is, I would say this, if their biggest weakness is something and they're down here with something, you know, they have the most room to improve with that thing. And if that thing gets fixed, even by whatever it is, just by a couple little changes, it can make a huge impact. So I did that for the rest of the clinic, and it was crazy. Like, I rarely say this, but people were just playing a lot better. And it's pretty rare for somebody to get that much better in the span of, 30 minutes. So why don't you try that and see? Even if you don't think your footwork's bad, if you're not sure if your footwork's good or bad, even for me, somebody I feel pretty confident in my feet, I practiced it and I tried it, and it helped me too. So just remember, give it a shot. Make the first thing to react and the first thing to move every time you're about to hit the ball be your feet. Your foot, whether it's your left or your right foot or both, has to move before your hands. Give it a shot. Second thing is sort of a similar variation to it. Every time you have to move to your left foot has to move first. And every time you move to your right foot has to move first. That's the drill. That's the second drill. And for the most part, that should be true when you play. I think there's going to be some special circumstances where that's not true and that makes sense. But for the purpose of this drill, you do the same thing. You play games, you drill, whatever it is, you're in some sort of rally. But if you see that you have to move to your left side, you have to move your left foot first. If you have to move your right side, you have to move your right foot first. So you don't move your hands, you don't move your opposite foot, you move that foot. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's super helpful too, because it prevents you from crossing your feet over. You can't cross your feet over if you do that. And it also prevents your feet from getting too close together. I think that's the second biggest mistake that I'm seeing outside of just a general lack of movement with the feet. I'm teaching a ton of these clinics and I'm seeing people with their feet this close together. There's almost never a situation in pickleball where my feet are closer together than the distance of a paddle length. So keep that in mind if you want a visual representation of it. Put a paddle in between your feet at all times. If there's ever less than a paddle, which is 17 inches, in between your feet, that's not good. And I would honestly recommend for more distance, I'd recommend for really a tennis racket length. You want your feet to be, I would say, wider than shoulder width apart, by the way. So they say, feet shoulder width apart sometimes. I don't think so. I was watching a guy teach us, everybody, how am I going to put the guy on the spot? There's some questionable pickleball coaching. It's a new sport. Give them the benefit of the doubt. But as he was saying, everybody, feet shoulder width apart. Disagree. I think your feet need to be wider than shoulder width apart. And if you watch other sports, you'll notice that that's the case for the most part, I think.
We are Selkirk. We are pickleball.
Pickleball?
Yeah, pickleball.
All ages, family, friends, dinks, drives, Ernies, ATPs, and whatever this is. 10 years in and just getting started. Here and not going anywhere. We are you, and you are who we work for. Family owned, USA made, pickleball proud. Selkirk Sport. We are pickleball.
Pickleball's closest comparison is actually ping pong, especially at the kitchen. It's not tennis. When you're at the kitchen in pickleball and you're dinking back and forth, super similar to ping pong. You're close to each other. And if you watch the best ping pong players in the world, their feet are not shoulder width apart. Their feet are wider. And there's a reason for that. Balance. It just helps you keep your hands in front too. The wider your base is, I think it's easier for your hands to be in front. If you're standing up straight, you're kind of close to your body with your hands. So yeah, keep your feet wide. And something that helps with that is always, if you're moving to your right foot first, left foot first. So give those two drills a try and let me know how you do, because from what I've seen, it helped me a little, but the worse your footwork is, the more it's going to help you. And they're both pretty simple. It's a couple of simple things. So, okay, we got that covered. I would say that in general, people, lastly, could, just like I said, benefit from a wider base. but also benefit from not bending their upper body down like this, and instead bending their knees. So keep that in mind too. If you're trying to get lower, the first thing that should bend has to be your legs. It shouldn't be your upper body going like this. You see a lot of people at the rec level kind of reach here and then do this and flick the ball with their arm. I don't think that's the way to do it either. And I think that these players do know, I think a lot of them at the rec level know in their hearts that they should be doing something different than leaning during this. But it's easier, and it's the human tendencies to want to do the thing that's easier, right? The path of least resistance. So I get it. That's why I'm trying to give you some. Trust me, I'm no stranger to taking the path of least resistance in a lot of areas. But that's why I'm giving you some specific things. So the third simple thing would just be, if you feel that you have to bend down, bend with your legs first. Okay, knees, bend your knees first, not this. So that would be another thing. I think those are the main things that will help you. And this is something that is super underrated. It sounds simple, but I hope this resonates with you. I hope you give it a try. So yeah, we've had a couple questions too. I have seen some questions that I like. I've seen a bunch of different questions. I had a couple questions. The first one would be, who has the best, because people want to know, if you do watch the pro game at all, which I think there is some benefit to it. I watch sometimes. I'm not saying it's the most fun thing to watch in the world, professional pickleball. There's NFL, there's NBA, there are some cooler sports to watch, don't get me wrong. But I think that if you are a player that wants to have some fun, just trying to add things to your game, right? If you want to watch the best of the best do things, then there is definitely a use case for watching professional pickleball, because you can copy other people's shots. So I had a question of, who has the best speed ups on the forehand side off the bounce, forehand side out of the air, backhand side off the bounce, and backhand side out of the air. So just the simplest, those are 4 different shots, and those are 4 different speed ups that I think everybody should have. And so some players to watch, I think, would be on the forehand side off the bounce would be Gabe Tardio, or Dylan Frazier, or probably Matt Wright. Matt Wright's also fun to watch. So is Gabe Tardio and Dylan, but it's those guys I think would be the main ones who, off the bounce on the forehand side, they've all got some great different qualities that you can try to implement in your game. A couple things, for example, Dylan and Gabe do this really well. They'll make it look like they're going to speed the ball up, and then they'll hold it, and then at the last second, they'll hit an aggressive dink. Pretty simple but effective strategy. You make it look like you're going to hit a speed up, and then right at the last second, you get an aggressive dink, and you can hit an aggressive dink after making it look like you speed the ball up with you have some extra space, because that person, for example, me, if I'm anticipating a speed up, now I'm on my heels. So if we're playing each other and you make it look like you're going to do some crazy speed up, I'm not really leaning in and getting ready to attack. I'm kind of on my heels saying, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. And then you have an extra 2 or 3 inches to hit an aggressive dink, as opposed to if you're slicing it, I know a speed up's not coming if I see you slicing, which is, for the record, why I think topspin dinks are better than slice dinks. Somebody's slicing, I know I can lean in and get ready to attack. So that 3 inches matters, right? If you can build some space and create some artificial space using some fakes and making it look like you're going to speed the ball up, that's how you get control of the kitchen legs. If you can start hitting some deeper aggressive dinks, that's how you do it. So Gabe Tardio, Matt Wright, or Dylan Frazier on the forehand off the bounce. And there's some guys with the forehand out of the air. JW Johnson, his forehand out of the air is great. We'll talk about. So yeah, forehand out of the air, probably JW Johnson. Another guy with a great forehand out of the air is Tyson. I would say Tyson, JW, and then maybe Ben Johns. They all do it differently. Christian Alshon, forehand out of the air is great. I think it's one of those things where with the forehand out of the air, if you're doing it on the left side against the right side player, and you'll see them do this a lot. If you're taking a forehand out of the air to attack it, as on the left against the player in front of you on the right, you can go pretty hard to the right shoulder, and a lot of the times that right side player isn't going to get out of the way. It's just tough to get out of the way from there, because when you're on the right, and you probably have been taught this, you might know this, that if you see an attack coming from the middle, you can just sit backhand. You can sit backhand because an attack's coming from the middle and you're on the right side of the court. If it goes to the right of your right shoulder, it's going out no matter what. So since you're sitting backhand, you're going to kind of fade backhand, which is, of course, an advantage of that is it's coming to your backhand, right? So you can just focus on the backhand, But a disadvantage is I think it's actually harder to get out of the way. I think the last thing you're thinking is get out of the way of that ball if it's coming towards you to your right shoulder and you're moving to your right, closer to your right shoulder is getting farther and farther to the right. So if you're taking that forehand out of the air from the left and you see that the other player in front of you is fading to the right, you can go hard to the right shoulder to where your shot's going out. But I think that might be the toughest one to get out of the way of for the right side player. So even if your shot's going out, you might hit him. As long as you hit him, you win the point. So yeah, that's something they do super well. Backhand off the bounce, I would say watch Connor Garnett play. Watch me play, to be honest. I mean, that's just one of my favorite shots. Riley Newman, backhand off the bounce, very good. And these are all being done with two-handers, obviously. To have a good backhand off the bounce, it's got to be done with two hands. You can't do it with one hand. A one-handed backhand off the bounce is just not a shot that pros hit for a lot of reasons. I don't even go into it. But then backhand out of the air, I would say that's another thing that I like to do really well. That might be one of my better shots also. But the guy with the best is JW Johnson. His backhand flick out of the air is just crazy good. And if you ever watch back at JW play, that's his shot at Major League Pickleball at back of his jersey. It didn't say Johnson, which is his last name. It actually said Flick Wizard. That's what he's known as. And he lives 10 minutes from me. We all call him the Flick Wizard because it's a backhand flick, right, out of the air. So just watch him play if you ever want to know and just copy him. So those would be the players I would watch and copy if you have any interest in implementing some of those shots. It can be fun to try to copy other people. I know I did a lot of that when I was getting better. So yeah, that's all we got for today. Thank you for watching.